Well, there are promising signs for keen holidaymakers who are itching to travel overseas this year. Darren Mara joins us now in the studio to explain. Darren, why the optimism?
Well, Ricardo, that is because Qantas has reopened its international flight bookings from the middle of this year, including destinations that have been hit hard by the global pandemic like the US and the UK. A spokesperson told SBS News the airline continues to review and update its schedule in response to the developing COVID-19 situation, and the latest move reflects the expectation that international travel will begin to restart from July 2021. Qantas has been servicing repatriation flights from major overseas cities. The federal government has yet to reveal when the international travel ban will be lifted, but the airline says if travel is still not permitted by then, those tickets will be either rebooked, refunded or given credit without a fee in line with its cancellation policy. Well, investors in England awaiting confirmation of COVID restrictions weren't spooked, with London's FTSE rising 1.6% on the first day Britain traded outside the European Union's orbit. The Brexit trade agreement does not cover much of the finance sector, meaning automatic access to the EU's financial market ended on the last day of 2020. European shares rallied in the first trading session of the year, but across the Atlantic, Wall Street had a tough start to 2021, the S&P 500 closing 1.5% lower.
The US is probably under a couple of issues. One, we've got the Senate election overnight, and there are some concerns that should the Democrats control the Senate, there's concern around some of the possibilities of policy coming through that may be negative for business and growth. But in broad terms, there's absolutely no doubt that the continuing escalation of the coronavirus infections is probably going to be on front of mind as well.
Meanwhile, the Australian share market recovered from its earlier losses to close virtually flat. The banks were weaker, but resource stocks rose. Buy now, pay later company Zip was the market's biggest loser. Furniture retailer Nick Scali hit a record following a profit upgrade. $1 Australian is buying a little over 77 US cents, but is mixed across the other major global currencies. Well, the highest point of Australia's unemployment rate appears to have passed, even as government stimulus like JobKeeper is wound down. The ANZ Job Ads series rose by 9.2% in December, surpassing its pre-pandemic level, as you see there, to record the highest result in 18 months. Now, that means there are more jobs being advertised now than in mid-2019, and much of that strength came from Victoria as restrictions were lifted.
So it suggests that we should continue to see solid employment gains through into early 2021 at least, which is a really good sign. And on the face of it, it does suggest that we could see the unemployment rate come down quite quickly in 2021.
ANZ says the jobless rate will be sticky, though, as business navigates the end of JobKeeper, while others may choose to increase the hours of their current workers rather than taking on new hires. And in another sign of a recovering economy, the number of loans being deferred continues to fall. 2.3% of the total loans were on hold in November, down from a high of 10% at its peak in May. Now, housing loans make up the majority of those granted repayment deferrals. That's according to the latest figures from the Australian Prudential Regulator. Victoria has the highest proportion amongst the other states and territories. Well, we may have been told to use credit and debit cards more during the COVID-19 pandemic to limit the spread of the virus through hard cash, but the amount of banknotes in circulation still hit record levels in December, up 1.7% to nearly $100 billion. Furthermore, the amount of $50 notes continues to soar, up almost 24% on a year ago. That's the fastest annual growth in nearly 12 years.
Well, it's basically FOTU, fear of the unknown. It's a similar situation why people panic buy in terms of toilet paper and tissue. They don't want to be kept short, see if they go into lockdown. And in terms of cash, people sort of are concerned about the future. They want to know that in the event of a disaster, they have access to physical cash so they can use it.
Notes in circulation rose by more than 13% over the past year. That's finance, Ricardo.
Thanks, Darren. Coming up next.